Hello. The NNLM National Evaluation Center welcomes you to this micro-training session about the process to create SMART objectives. This presentation is aimed at helping Subawardees and NNLM ROC staff to develop learning objectives for their activities that can be evaluated using the Participant Activity Survey, PASS. So welcome everybody, and let's get started. Today's agenda includes first, useful definition of goals and objectives. We will talk about the difference between both terms, as this is important to avoid confusion, sometimes even within our own team. We will also talk about the importance of having clear goals and objectives for any project or initiative that we may want to start. We will learn how to write SMART objectives, and we will see examples. Goals are broad general statements of something that our organization wants to accomplish. A goal states what the organization wants to achieve. Goals are the force that will start moving the ball. The goal focuses on the ultimate destination. Here we have a few recommendations for writing goals. First, be concise. It means go straight to the point. For example, you do not need to give lots of explanations or theory behind the goal. Use simple words. As much as possible, write free of acronyms or technical terms. Use affirmative sentences. Avoid negation, and most importantly, avoid double negation. You want your goal to be proactive. The goal describes what will happen, not what isn't going to happen. Look at this example. We now have the big goal: raise awareness about eating disorders. The goal is concise, uses simple words, and does not include technical terms. It is phrased in active voice. Always make sure that your goals are clear for people outside of your team or organization. Think, for instance, of people whom English is not their first language. Think of community members in general. Now that we have explained how to think about goals, let's move to the related yet different concept of objectives. Remember, goals are broad statements that talk about our ideal accomplishments. Objectives, on the other hand, are pointed, specific, and more tangible. Objectives describe a set of small steps that will take the team to accomplish the ultimate goal. In this picture, the goal is at the top of the ladder, while objectives are the steps that will take the team to the top, to the destination, to the goal. Objectives are sentences that establish how we are going to meet the goal. Objectives answer the questions how, who, and when will the team move to reach the goal. We are now going to talk about a particularly useful and very well-known framework for writing objectives, the S.M.A.R.T. framework. During the planning stage of the project, say a class, an exhibit, a workshop, a book club, just to name a few, organizer must write the objectives in such a way that all interested parties, say sponsors, managers, community members, target population, have no question that this activity is relevant, that is achievable with reasonable resources, and that it will move the team closer to the overarching goal. SMART components must be specific. This component must answer the question, what will happen and who will be affected? Measurable. By how much? Achievable. Can we do it with our available resources? Relevant. Is this activity or project moving the team closer to the ultimate goal? Time-bounded. When will the target group receive the benefits? Why it is important to have clear objectives? Because they help us to communicate with all interested parties. They help us to measure progress and give us an opportunity to readjust our strategy as needed. Please remember that objectives must be concise, free of technical terms or acronyms, and easy to understand by the general audience. Now, let's move to analyze each one of the components of the SMART objectives. Specific. This component responds to the question, what it is happening and who will receive the benefits of the activity. Avoid using ambiguous words like much, good, a few, clear. What it is good or clear for somebody could be different for somebody else depending on the context. And keep in mind that every interested person who reads this statement should get the same message without needing additional clarification. Here in this example, in the left we have an objective that it is not specific. This objective does not answer the questions what will happen and who will receive the benefits. Besides, it is using the word good, which is an ambiguous word. What is good for somebody might not be good for others. And remember that every person should get the same message without the need of further clarification. Let's modify the objective to make it specific. Teenager participants will be able to identify symptoms of eating disorders and learn yoga routines. What is going to happen? Participants will be able to identify symptoms related to eating disorders and learn yoga routines. Who is going to be affected? Teenager attendees. So, we have incorporated the first component of the SMART approach. But at this point, the objective is still not SMART. Let's explore the second component. Measurable. This component tells the team how we are going to evaluate the project. Here, we'll be thinking about indicators. An indicator is the observable evidence that you will use to evaluate your accomplishments. Indicators could be number of participants, percentage of reduction of smokers after a workshop about healthy habits, increasing grades after a support program in science. Now the team has to think. Do we have the mechanism in place to collect the data? Do we have the evaluation surveys ready to use? What is going to happen with the data collected? It is very important that at this point, the team members think of the data collection method and analysis and dissemination of results. Let's go back to our previous example. We have an objective that is specific, but it is not measurable yet. Teenager participants will be able to identify symptoms of eating disorders and learn yoga routines. Let's see how we can modify it to make it measurable. Teenager attendees will be able to identify 5 symptoms and 5 triggers of eating disorders, learn 10 tips to avoid them, and practice yoga for 1 hour. We now have an objective that is specific and measurable, but it is not yet SMART. Let's move on to the other characteristics. Achievable. The next question we must consider is this objective achievable with our available resources? Time, staff, infrastructure, skills, money. If the answer is no, then it is probably a good time to make adjustments. Of course, there are always unforeseen events out of your control that might affect your project. But, for the most part, under no extreme circumstances, meeting the objectives should always be within the team's control. Let's go back to our previous example. The case in the left is of course highly desirable. Teenager participants will be able to identify 5 symptoms and 5 triggers of eating disorders, learn 10 tips to avoid them, and practice yoga for 1 hour. But given the time constraints and all other resources available, it is very likely that the objective could not be met. Keep it simple. Teenagers who participate in the activity will be able to identify 5 symptoms of eating disorders and practice yoga for 1 hour. The next question we must consider is whether the objective is relevant to reach the goal or not. Here it is very important to be familiar with the context. The planner must conduct research on the topic, review best practices, and maybe talk to subject matter experts to determine what is relevant to reach the goal. Let's go back to our example. Teenager participants will be able to identify 5 symptoms of eating disorders and do yoga for 1 hour. It is probably the case that the yoga practice is not really a relevant component to achieve the overarching goal. It is fun and even desirable, but it might not be relevant for our main goal. Let's see how we can modify to make the objective SMART. Teenager participants will be able to identify 5 symptoms of eating disorders. Now we have an objective that is specific, measurable, achievable, but it is not yet SMART. Let's go to the last component. Time-bounded. Objectives could be short-term, intermediate-term, or long-term. Make sure to indicate your interested parties when they will be able to see the impact or the result of the activity. It could be right after the activity, in 1 week, in 2 months, in the next 5 years. Again, it all depends on the nature of the project. Just make sure to make it clear from the beginning. In our example, it is clear what will happen, who will be benefited, by how much, and the objective is relevant to reach the goal. But we still need to know when the interested parties will receive the benefits of the activity. By adding this last piece of information, we will have a SMART objective. At the end of the workshop, teenager participants will be able to identify 5 symptoms of eating disorders. Congratulations! You have a SMART objective. If you have any question, concern, or suggestion, please contact NEC by mail at nec@northwestern.edu. Check our website, check NEC's news blog, or follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much.